Good morning and welcome. So, thanks for everyone joining. We'll just wait 30 seconds and then we will get started. So, if you want to have your cameras on, that's great. I love to see the people that I'm talking to. If you're walking around the street or driving, obviously, there's no need for your cameras to be on. For those that don't know me, my name is Dean Holmes. I'm one of the directors of Absolute Wealth Advisors. I started the business almost 18 years ago with Paul Barrett. Obviously, you know all of the advisors that look after you now. And I spend my time helping to run the business and helping to share different messages through these webinars that we've been running. So we've been running cybersecurity related webinars and we've been doing this quarterly, as well as make sure we're keeping everyone informed in relation to investments and estate planning and other topics of note. But our focus today in the time that we spend together is our cybersecurity webinar. So this is, I think, the third or fourth time that I've run this webinar series, and I'll continue to do it just to ensure that it's top of mind for all of our clients and obviously all of the people that you speak to as well, because the more vigilant we are, the more likely that we can spot these scams over time. It's definitely on the increase as we go through, and hopefully today I'll share some insights of things to be aware of, ways that we can start to protect ourselves online, and questions we should be asking ourselves as we go through the process of trying to be aware of what's going on. First and foremost, before we jump into the cybersecurity, this is Anthony McInnes, one of our advisors at Absolute Wealth Advisors. He is launching a book club for clients and associates. So for anyone that is interested, you can get a free copy of this book courtesy of Anthony, and then we're having a conversation about the themes of the book on the 9th of December. So if you are interested, you can put some details in the chat, or you can hold your phone up on the QR code and register there as well. If you'd like more information, just put a comment in the chat as well, and I'll come back to you separately around that. But that's just to keep our clients informed in some other different perspectives, definitely in and around what we will do and can do in retirement and what matters most throughout that process. So why this matters now is, and why this is constantly mattering, I suppose, first and foremost, is that the scams that unfortunately are being created with the rise of AI and artificial intelligence, any tool that you see that's being used for good, unfortunately, can also be used for evil. And we're seeing this ever evolve with the concept. The language is a deep fake in the particular situation, but essentially what it is, it's actually taking, in my situation, my voice and my video presence, which is online, and turning that into a fake video where it looks and sounds like me, it moves like me, but it's not me. And so we're seeing some situations where that's starting to trick people, but also being used at scale. So this particular guy, he's an astrophysicist in America, Neil deGrasse, and there's a video that he's put out recently talking about, the fake video is talking about that he thinks the Earth is flat. Obviously, he doesn't think that, nor is it. However, the quality of the deep fake video is actually amazingly good, such that it can trick a lot of people. And so we need to be aware of this through the process, because I'm really here today, I could tell you that, but there's going to be situations in the future where people are going to contact you and the video has the potential to be fake. And so we need to be thinking about this and obviously taking in the information because it may not be fake, but also being aware that we need to verify information or communication in another way as well, just in case what we are being presented to is a deep fake. So a couple of things just to remember from our business perspective, and this should be the case for any service providers like accountants and lawyers as well that you might be working with over time, is there's a certain number of things that we will never do. And we want you to know that we'll never do them, such that if you ever received an email from someone pretending to be Absolute Wealth Advisors, and we'll talk about how we might get tricked into that in the future. But if you ever got an email from someone pretending to be from Absolute Wealth Advisors, there's certain things that we will never ask you to do via email, and that's quite important. So first and foremost, we're never going to ask you to transfer investment money into our accounts. We might ask you to pay an invoice, which is slightly below, but we're never going to ask you to transfer money into our bank accounts in order to facilitate an investment. So this is a common investment related scam that unfortunately happens, is that the scammer might be saying, I'm going to place a term deposit with Macquarie Bank, and then can you transfer the money into this particular bank account? And it might be a bank account with the NAB that they try to say that it's a trust account or it's their account. It's something that we would never do through our processes. So it's really important for you to be aware. We're never going to ask you to transfer investment money into any accounts that's in the name of Absolute Wealth Advisors. It's always going to be in the name of the product provider that's been recommended to you. Now, that might be Hub24 or Colonial First State or some other brand names along the way. But that is, once you know who your product provider is, that doesn't change very often. And so therefore we get comfortable with who we are transferring money to. We're never going to ask you to make new investments into new products without giving you advice around it. So you're not going to receive an email from us recommending quickly that you go into a new investment. So being cautious around investment recommendations is that we're going to give you an advice document. We're going to talk to you. So one of the advisors is going to be picking up the phone. You're going to be having a video meeting, and we're going to recommend you go into a particular investment. There's going to be no urgency, because that's something scammers create, is urgency when there's not. We're going to document our advice in email or a statement of advice, and then ask you to make the decision and transfer the money. So there's no urgency, and there's a pretty strict process that we'll follow in relation to that. We're not going to ask you to pay different bills without sending you a formal invoice. So most of our clients pay through a direct debit process, so it's repeatable and consistent. However, we're not going to be sending you random invoices for you to pay at different points in time. That's often a way the scammers try to send out, frankly, millions of emails, hoping to create the urgency of a bill, and therefore you click and pay that bill. So we're not going to do anything like that in terms of our advice. And finally, we're not going to change our bank accounts. It's been a very common fraud, unfortunately, whereby bank accounts have been changed, or clients have received emails from what they thought was their accountant, solicitor, or advisors saying that, hey, the bank account has changed. Can you now pay into this bank account? So that's an action that unfortunately has resulted in people transferring money, obviously, to the wrong bank account, or what was communicated to be the new bank account. But actually it was the scammers that were in that client's email pretending to be that service provider and then saying, can you transfer money to the wrong account? So we know that we're not going to change that. And so you can have confidence that if you've paid to us before, so you've paid an invoice to us before and you've used a particular bank account, that bank account's not going to change anytime soon. We'll give you plenty of warning had it going to be changing. So a couple of things about the scam entry points that we need to be aware of. How do scammers start to contact us? So the reality is that they're going to contact us through email, text, or phone call as the quick ways in which they're going to contact you. And so I'm sure all of you are receiving lots of what we call spam email or junk email through this process. There's plenty of that, but the volume is obviously increasing, and we need to be diligent in terms of finding the ones that are actually from Absolute Wealth Advisors, for example, and what might be scams are relating to investments. So email is a way in which they get into us. Text messages is the second most common way that they're getting into your world. And so if anyone's living in, half our clients are in Sydney, lots of quick scams have been around not paying your toll on time. There's plenty of toll roads in Sydney, and so therefore it's a quick and easy text message to say, hey, we noticed that you didn't pay the toll last week. Can you click on this link and pay the toll on the Sydney Harbour Bridge? It seems innocent and it's very quick, but the implications of that is you click on that link and you're entering in your credit card details or your bank account details in order to pay the $3 fine, or the $3 toll, sorry. The scammers are then starting to collect information as a result. And so unfortunately at that point in time, they've got two pieces of information. They've got your mobile phone number because they've just texted you on it, and then you click the link and entered in your bank account details. And so the scammers start to build a database of information on you, and then they're trying to get 2, 3, and 4 pieces of information about you, and then they're actually going to be able to trick you and actually do worse scams going forward. The final one is the phone call, and the phone call is always creating urgency around an event. Okay, so what I always say in financial planning and the work that we're doing with all of our clients is very rarely do we have really urgent things to do. There's a few occasions where there's something that's very important and urgent. However, it's in the definite minority of activities that we will have or your advisor will have with you. And so if you're getting a phone call that is creating urgency and creating secrecy, don't tell your family about this phone call kind of thing. Urgency and secrecy are two of the tricks that the scammers try to use in order for you to drop your guard in relation to thinking about whether this is a type of scam. And unfortunately, most of our phone numbers are known by scammers, which we'll get onto how they found that in the beginning. But most of our phone numbers are known. And so being cautious around answering phone calls from people, from numbers that you know, and avoid, if it's not a number, we should be cautious. And then if that particular person on the phone is creating urgency or secrecy, we should be cautious around it. What is the very quick activity that you need to do is you need to hang up and dial back the product provider or the bank or the accountant, whoever that person said they were calling from, and you're dialing back to simply make sure that it was an actual legitimate call. And so that's the quick and easy way. So if you're getting a scam call from the Commonwealth Bank and you're feeling like there's urgency, secrecy, and it just doesn't feel right, all you need to do is hang up that phone call. You don't need to continue the call at all. And then you simply call the Commonwealth Bank through their normal phone number, which you can find on the internet, and have a conversation with someone on the staff there. And you'll quickly and easily be able to determine whether there's something that you need to talk to the Commonwealth Bank about or it was a scam. Now, the challenge is it's getting increasingly difficult, even in emails, to spot the fakes. And so the two examples that I've got on the screen here, we have to remember first and foremost, the one on the left is AIA. And so the scammers will use a particular external product provider and they'll try to use lots. And they're fishing for the people that potentially have a health insurance. So you might look at, if your health insurance is with another provider, you might look at this email and look at it and go, I would never click on that because I'm not with AIA. And that's absolutely the first wave of defense. If you don't have the product, you're probably not going to click on the link. But remember, what the scammers are doing is essentially sending out a fake email about health insurance all the time with all the providers. So if you get the AIA fake email today, you're going to get the fake Bupa email tomorrow, and you might be with Bupa. And so what we're trying to do through this process is demonstrate that you're going to get multiple scam emails from multiple private health insurers. And so as a result, eventually they'll find the one that is yours, and we've got to be therefore willing and able to not click on it. So at this point in time, the scam, this particular one on the left, is talking about giving you money. So the interesting thing about that is the scammers are not trying to take your money. They're trying to trick you because they're offering to give you a refund, but there was a problem in the processing. They didn't have your right bank account details, or we've got an error, and then we click on the link. You can see that the scammers are also trying to give you comfort in relation to security systems, links expiring, etc., at the bottom, to give you this level of comfort that it is actually okay, which in this particular example, it is not okay. And so what we need to do through this process is that if we are with AIA and we did receive this email, all we need to do is log on to the AIA website and actually with our username and password and see what's going on within the system. If you were due a payment from any private health insurer or anything like that. Simply logging into your website will show you that you are due that payment, and you'll be able to update your banker details or whatever you need to do from inside the website. You very rarely need to click on an email in order to do that. You just log in and follow the process from there. The second particular fake email here is a really tricky one, actually. It took me a second to work out what was going on in this particular email here, but it's actually really common of what happens over time. This is a password reset request, and it's the email address that it's come from looks like no reply at Microsoft.com. Okay. What the scammers have actually done is combined the letter R and the letter N to make it look, at a quick look, like it's the letter M for Microsoft. Okay. And so this particular scam is amazing in its creativity of trying to trick people that this is potentially an email coming from Microsoft. It is not an email coming from Microsoft. It's however you would pronounce the R and the N. That's who the particular emails come from. And so this, once again, is a common trick whereby the email sender will actually look like the actual company, but we've got to be an element of diligence to see who the sender of the email is. For example, even with Absolute Wealth Advisors, the end URL of our website or our emails now is absolutewealth.au. So that's our email addresses. If you do email absolute.sydney, which was our old one, it still is received by us. But if you can imagine that someone was trying to pretend to be Absolute Wealth Advisors, they would actually change Absolute Wealth ever so slightly that you may not notice it. And so unfortunately, someone could send you an email from Absolute Wealth, but instead of the letter O, it could have the number O. And so to your eyes, it would look quickly and easily like an email from us, but it's actually coming from an incorrect email address. And so a way to be diligent around emails is to actually be looking at who the sender of the email and looking at the part after the @ symbol to look at that and say, is that a company that I know? Is that their email address through the process? So a couple of things we should do when we are receiving any type of communication in relation to what could be a potential scam is we need to do these three things, which is just pause, process, and then proceed. So once again, to reiterate, in everything that we do, there's no rush. So the pause is actually the most important thing that we can do at any point in time in and around transferring money, making investments, clicking on links, reading emails, etc., is that just take that pause to ask ourselves, is this a normal request that this person is asking for? And so at that point in time, we need to pause and then process the information in front of us. We're doing this mental checklist of, is this the right email address? Is this a normal request? Is this an urgent request? How can I verify this request by another source? You'll see our mobile phone numbers at the end of this slide deck. At any point in time when we're asking you to do something, if you've paused and processed or paused and said, I'm going to verify it, you can call anyone in Absolute Wealth Advisors, any mobile phone number you like, and let them know to ask for help in relation to anything that you think might be related to us. So we do that because we want to make sure that we're available in an emergency as well. But you pause, you process, and then we proceed after we've had that thinking process. So how do scammers get your information, and how more likely are they going to get our information in the future? Unfortunately, the answer to that is simply very. And so there's a couple of screenshots in here is that our identity is really valuable and we need to be thinking about protecting it over time. And the first one, these are 3 just data breaches that have occurred in the 2025 financial year that I want us to all think about, because our information might have leaked from that, plus the variety of other cyber leaks that have happened that we all know about. But I'm giving you the indication of how we sometimes accidentally give companies our personal details, and we potentially should ask ourselves, do they need that information? So the Fullerton Hotel is in Martin Place in Sydney, and so they had a particular data breach, and passports and driver's licenses were taken as part of that data breach. And this is an interesting question for us all to be more diligent about going forward, is that say you booked a hotel night at the Fullerton, for example, you go to check in, and whether you're a visitor to the country or a visitor to the hotel, their process is to ask for a copy of your driver's license or passport, or their process was this. And we have to ask ourselves the question, and the check-in staff our question of going, do they actually need that particular document in order for you to stay at the hotel? Potentially, I would argue, if you paid for your hotel room, you don't really need to provide your passport in order to be able to do it. But what was happening back in the day, and I knew this when I traveled, and I'm sure it's happened to everyone, that you check into a hotel and they take a photocopy of your passport as you staying in the hotel. And that piece of paper, as it was when I was traveling, now it's probably electronic scan as well. Who knows where that piece of paper is and how risky that will be going forward. We as Absolute Wealth Advisors have asked copies for your ID as well over time, and constantly do. And that's a question for us to answer in the same way. And our answer is we have anti-money laundering and AFSL obligations to meet on an ongoing basis. So we actually need to know who you are and have an updated confirmation of your ID. We're working with some providers to change from asking for a copy to going through a verification process, which is entering your details into a secure portal, holding up your ID, smiling for the camera, things like that, which is the new technology to verify. But this is an example of just being cautious around how much data we're giving to different people when they don't need it, or when they may not need it, and actually pushing back. JB Hi-Fi is another one, for example. I'm sure all of us have bought something on jbhifi.com over the years. And so this is how the scammers may have got access to your email address, and or maybe they've got access to your mobile phone number because you've given that to JB Hi-Fi as well. Maybe during the JB Hi-Fi sign-up process, JB Hi-Fi also asked for your date of birth because they wanted to send you a $5 voucher on your birthday. Through that process, therefore, we've given JB Hi-Fi our date of birth, and therefore our scammers have our name, email address, date of birth, and things like that. And so once again, it's this caution for us as consumers when we're registering for things and giving away personal information, just to be clear as to whether, does JB Hi-Fi need my date of birth? Perhaps I could just make up a date of birth and give it to JB Hi-Fi, because you're not going to change JB Hi-Fi's technology system overnight. But JB Hi-Fi don't care whether you give them a real date of birth or a fake date of birth. You have to give me your real date of birth because that's important for anti-money laundering and financial advice, but JB Hi-Fi doesn't necessarily need it. So our personal information is going to be out there in the internet, so we do need to be cautious around it and actually starting to potentially separate or set up new communications or new email addresses just to communicate with key people and not for online shopping and things like that. So the extra friction can protect us over time. As I said, scammers are trying to trade on urgency and people trying to do things quick in our busy world. And what we need to do is actually put friction on ourselves in order to reduce that. So what's a couple of examples of this is definitely making sure that we've thinking about our work email, our personal email, and maybe our secure email separately. So what does that look like is that just use your work email address for work, for the employees that are on the call, the workers that are on the call. Have a personal email address for your communication with your friends, your family, and maybe your online shopping. And then the third thing you might like to have is a secure email address, which is just used with your professional advisors, your bank, your financial advisor, your mortgage broker, your accountant, just one email address for those people. Now, it will create a bit of hassle because you've got to log in and look at different emails, but we're trying to create that friction in order to make sure that your personal information is kept safe. Some of our clients have the Absolute Wealth Advisors app on their phone, so it's protected through a company called My Prosperity. So some of our clients at the moment, which we're rolling out, is that we have an app on the App Store with Apple and Google. It's then an application that sits on your phone, and you can send us secure messages through that as well. So we're rolling this out across all of Absolute Wealth Advisors over time, and that's another way in which you can communicate with us, which is more secure than text messages and emails. Same for phones. My wife, as an example, she has a work phone and a personal phone, which does mean that she can turn off the work communication first and foremost, but also the authentication and text messages and security of both of those devices are kept separate. And when you're thinking about your banking and getting text message codes and things like that, just be aware that if you're using one phone and it's your work phone and things like that, your employer can turn that off and you've lost all your multi-factor authentication. That can be a big loss. Same as if you've got all your multi-factor authentication on your work phone and your employer wipes your phone, you've then lost all of that data as well. So just be careful in relation to all of that in relation to transferring money. The financial red flags is just being really paranoid when we're transferring money. There's been a change in the banking technology recently whereby when you're transferring money to new bank accounts, some Australian banks are verifying the account names. So if you were going to transfer money to me, you put in the BSB and the account number, and then you type that the account name's Dean Holmes. It is going to do a check. You can't 100% rely on this, but it is going to do a check to make sure that account name is in my name. It's going to create some questions, of course, because perhaps I've given you my wife's bank account or our joint bank account, and so it might create an error. But just being cautious when moving money around is key to make sure that if we're transferring money to a new account, we're double checking and understanding who and why we're transferring that money to over time. Final thing is in terms of your physical assets or your home computers, we do need to make sure that we're doing a couple of things on an ongoing basis with our home computers, slightly outside of my expertise level. But however, we do need to make sure our computers are always up to date. Both Windows and Apple computers, you'll get this pop up on your screen at obviously the most inconvenient time to say that you need to update your operating system. What is happening at that point in time is the reason why you need to update your operating system is Apple or Windows have identified a threat to the system, and they need to update your system so your system is not exposed. Okay. Scammers will also try to send you emails about this, so we do need to be cautious. However, if the program's already on your computer and you're just keeping your computer up to date, that's really important. We do need to make sure we've got versions of antivirus on your computer so that the computer is constantly being scanned. We do need to be cautious around Wi-Fi. So doing your internet banking on the cafe Wi-Fi in Budapest is not recommended. So that if you're using the cafe Wi-Fi, there is the chance that the communication that's going from your phone to the cafe Wi-Fi out to the internet is being read and understood by third parties. So we need to be cautious about using Wi-Fi globally, both in Starbucks in Sydney and Budapest, to not use it definitely not using it in Australia and being really cautious overseas. Most of our phone plans, we have so much data that we can't use anyway. So don't use Wi-Fi, just use your 5G at the end of the day. And finally, making sure that we've got backups, whether you're backing up to the cloud or backing up to something physical and keeping it safe, either is recommended. Just making sure that your photos are updating to iCloud. I know it's not anything to do with cybersecurity, but being clear that your phone is getting backed up and your important data is being backed up somewhere is really important. Obviously, your photos and memories as well. I do this for my parents and in-laws. Do make sure that your phone is getting updated through that process as well. So these are all of our contact details of advisors, client service team, and myself. So you're more than welcome to take a screenshot of that or ask us for these phone numbers. As you can see, we do need to change the email addresses on here. That these ones do work, but that is okay. But our new is at absolutewealth.au. But these are the mobile phone numbers of the advisors, so you can call your advisor on their mobile if you're being asked to transfer money or make any transfers into any investment account or anything like that. If you're ever concerned about that, call your advisor, have a conversation with them to make sure that we know what you're doing as well as your partner. If you can't get any of the advisors, you can call me as well and we can talk through it. Great way to do it is we can then have a video call. You can share your screen, everything like that. We can help you make sure or hold your hand to make sure that the transaction that you're being asked to do is legitimate. Better to pause and process, as I said earlier, than falling into the trap of making a mistake and then losing capital through those transfers. Final thing, being clear on firstly, that MFA, that stands for multi-factor authentication. So this is the multi-factor authentication is when you get the text message or have to put the code from your email or your phone into a particular website to log in. If you do get the text messages from any multi-factor authentication source, all the text message says at the top always is never tell this code to anyone. And so to reiterate, you should never tell that code to anyone, even someone pretending to be from the bank or someone from the bank. They'll never ask you for that code. And so lots of the multi-factor authentication tricks have been that the scammer is resetting your password online, and how they reset your password online is it says, do you want to reset your password online? Yes. I'll send a code to your mobile, and they're calling you at the same time saying, hey, I'm from the NAB security team. I need that code that was just sent to your mobile phone to verify your identity. You do not give those codes to anyone through that process. Our password manager can help you store and manage passwords over time. If you are an iPhone and Apple user, Apple has a password manager installed within it where it's suggesting long and complicated passwords for you, and you should be using long and complicated passwords, and then storing them within the Apple password manager is quite prudent. It's obviously password and face protected through that process. So they're the messages that I wanted to share with everyone today. Part of what we do at the end is just open up for any questions or comments. So you're more than welcome to pop any comments into the chat. We do have all the other cybersecurity webinars on the Absolute Wealth YouTube channel. So what I will do is I'll just put the link to our YouTube channel. So anything that we've run in the past, we will have available and uploaded into our YouTube channel. So that's something that you might like to spend some time in terms of just looking at the resources for the Absolute Wealth Advisors channel. And so as you can see, we've had some other videos here, which is our last cybersecurity update, some videos from Anthony, as well as the estate planning webinar and things like that we did in the past. So everyone can jump in here and watch any of the videos back that you'd like to do so as well. Thanks everyone for attending. As we know, there's a couple of different versions of this which we can watch, but I do run them quarterly because there's new things that are coming up, as well as just the idea that we should keep them all top of mind. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.